1 week season.
And welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you are with us. We are back in the DFS lab, as always, presented by 1 week season, where the purpose of this show is build a lineup on DraftKings, use it as a vehicle to talk through the upcoming slate. It is Tuesday, October 22nd, a very early look at week 8. Of course, NBA is starting tonight, so people's attention potentially a little bit diverted now the NBA is getting going. I'm your host, Cheeseman. So glad you're with us, and welcoming up Hilow. Hilow, what's up, dude? How was your week 7?
Week 7 sucked. It was, yeah, right. I went from 3 straight weeks of a legitimate sweat to absolutely nothing in week 7. I played 6 rosters and I locked Juju Smith-Schuster across them.
Same here.
Dude,
it hurts.
3 of the 6 had Deshaun Watson doubles. That's how my week went. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But yeah, we turned the page to the next week, and now we got the slate with like so many injuries and so many interesting dynamics, I think. Yeah, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, let's talk about it, dude. Yeah, let's turn the page on week 7. I'm all with you. Yeah, what stands out to you in week 8? Again, especially like you said, some injury dynamics are going on.
Yeah, so there's like Tampa Bay is probably down its top 2 wide receivers. We saw Cade Otton kind of step into some volume last night. There is the quarterback situation in Cleveland. They just dealt Amari Cooper, so there's some potential value there. And then off first glance, like, again, I haven't done too much prep. Obviously, we're recording this Tuesday morning. But at first glance, the slate looks like there are a lot of potential running back plays. So it'd be very interesting to kind of piece throughout the rest of the week how this slate is likeliest to unfold.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's jump in to DraftKings here and pull up. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we didn't really talk about this beforehand. So what do you want to what contest do you want to look at here?
Yeah, so for me personally, this is like a down week in the expensive milli makers. So for me personally, I'll be attacking like my normal single entry 3 max. So let's build for the big spy. That'll be like a good mix of.
Okay, so this one right here, 400K prize pool.
Yeah. So obviously the biggest single entry that is available on DraftKings. This will be a good mix between kind of large field stuff and small field single entry type stuff.
Absolutely, man. And so, yeah, I mean, you got quite a few, like you have, let's see if I count it. Of course, you have 13 games on this slate. We're back to 13. And then you have, from my count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 games at a 46 total or higher. So, what do you want to look at here first in terms of game environments or potentially a stack that you want to start this lineup with? Or do you want to kind of go big picture for a second?
Yeah, there were 2 kind of things I had in mind. We talked about like the fact that there's a ton of running backs. So like go to the running back tab.
Yeah.
And like Saquon Barkley's on the slate, Derrick Henry's on the slate. And then we have this like sub-elite pricing tier of like guys who are pushing to be workhorse backs. One of the interesting ones is Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker had been kind of pushing to be this kind of demi workhorse type guy. And then in week 7, he outtouched Zach Charbonnet 7-4 in the first half. So and I think it ended up being like 17-9 or something like that. I'd have to go back and check the numbers. Hold on, let me see. Let me pull it up. Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker had 16 opportunities, and I think it was 2-9 to Zach Charbonnet. Sorry, this is off memory. It was.
You're good.
Yeah, so 17-9. Kenneth Walker's opportunities versus Zach Charbonnet. So was that a function of the game environment? Was like, why did the Kenneth Walker kind of turning into this robust type borderline workhorse guy? Why did that change against the Falcons in a game where the Seahawks controlled throughout? And then there's Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has put up 29.4 fantasy points or more in his 3 games that he hasn't left with injury. And he did that also 2 weeks ago while playing 42% of the offensive snaps. So he scored 5 touchdowns in 3 healthy games that he did not leave with injury. It's kind of weird to discuss that because like he's only had 2 fully healthy games. The third one 2 weeks ago was him playing 42% of the offensive snaps, and he still put up 29 or 30 fantasy points. So there's him at 7,700. Scrolling down a little further, J.K. Dobbins against the Saints, a Saints team. Their defensive line is allowing the most yards before contact per attempt this season, and the Chargers are coming off a game where their run game was highly ineffective. So I don't know if he's going to draw the interest that I think he should here, especially with Gus Edwards out. Like Kamani Vidal is not trusted with the same volume that Gus Edwards was. So, I mean, 2 weeks ago we saw Dobbins have like, what was it, like 27 running back opportunities against the Broncos. So against the Saints team that's reeling, probably they've already announced that they're going to start Spencer Rattler if Derek Carr can't go again. This should be a very different game environment than what the Chargers saw last night. So again, him at this like sub-elite pricing tier. James Conner playing Miami, another one at 6,500. Kareem Hunt for the Chiefs that are now like starved for offensive playmakers. He's seen running back opportunities of 24 and 28 in the previous 2 games. And now he gets a who the hell are they playing? I just said it.
Las Vegas.
The Raiders, yeah. So now he gets a Raiders team that is towards the bottom of the league in rush yards allowed per game. Jesus. Yeah, so it's a very interesting slate as far as and then we'll keep going. Like Javonte Williams coming off of a breakout performance, only on 14 opportunities, but again against those Saints that we just talked about. So now he gets a Carolina team that is dead last in a lot of defensive metrics. So it's just, it just looks like a very interesting slate as far as the running back options available. And then as far as like game environments go, it's kind of weird. Like where there's higher game totals than we're used to, right? But like looking through that, a lot of those games have extremely wide spreads. A lot of those games are involving teams that we don't necessarily look at as pushing a game environment. So it's a very interesting slate off first glance.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Is there a big dynamic change from 10 to 13 games to you, or is it not too big of a shift?
Yeah, it is. The more games that are on a slate is more opportunities for outlier production to be had. So I'd expect, even with player pricing appearing to still be tight, more opportunities for outlier production means that the score required to ship GPPs is probably going to be higher this week. And 2 weeks ago, it was like 205 that was shipping GPPs. Last week, it was like 180 that was shipping majors. I think the winner of the $100 milli last week was like just over 180 points. So yeah, so it's probably going to be a little bit more than that required to win this week. So we'll kind of build with that in mind.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about kind of, this running back pool, which I'm already nervous because I'm like, I like my running back pool to be tight. And it already feels like you said, like there's like 8+ guys in different price ranges that you could play and could, like you said, could, put up a score you had to have. So that's always makes me nervous. But again, it's early. So hopefully, we'll get dialed in as we go on. But where do you want to go next?
Let's start at running back. And this is kind of an exercise or something I use to, when I start poking around with roster construction, is like scroll all the way down as far as you can go until you start feeling like mega uncomfortable. Start plugging in and then go from there to kind of see like what you're able to do at the other roster positions. So off first glance, we won't even depart from the names that we talked about just now. So that would be like Javonte Williams at 6K, and that would be like Kareem Hunt at 6,300, and then even add J.K. Dobbins at 6,900. So we'll start with like all 3 of those guys and kind of see.
So plug those 3
roster in. Yeah, plug those 3 in, and we'll kind of see how this roster comes together.
No, yeah, I like doing that before too. Just basically like, okay, who could I even like, play at running back. J.K. Dobbins. Hopefully he's in the flex slot, but we'll adjust that when we get to it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, no worries.
there it is.
All right, so let's talk about like our primary stack. Particularly in single entry, if we get Jameson Williams is on the mind after getting suspended, or not, he hasn't been suspended yet, but it's probably coming today or tomorrow. God, man, these injuries. We were just talking before we started how I had a team in 21st in the drafters millie, so half a millie to first place. That lost Jameson Williams and Chris Godwin yesterday. So yesterday sucked.
Oh, dude, yeah, that blows. That's terrible.
Yeah, but a lot of people are dealing with injuries, man. These injuries are crazy. But anyway, back to to this slate and what we're talking about here today. Particularly in single entry, I feel like we're going to get a lot of Jameis Winston. Because pricing is tight, he's priced way down at 5,200, and he plays a very, very pass funnel Baltimore Ravens defense. Which, dude, last night, what was Liam Cohen doing in the most pass funnel matchup in the league? And I think it was in entering the fourth quarter, they had something like 26 rush attempts versus 22 pass attempts. And I was just like, what are we doing here, man? And then I was screaming for like Chris Godwin to get going, and then he fucking dislocates his ankle. Anyway,
I know, man. Sometimes these offensive coordinators, you really wonder like what they're, what they're thinking. To be blunt, like what in the world they're thinking, just doing this. Because I mean, Dallas a few weeks ago, they tried to run against Detroit like way longer than I thought they would. We've seen multiple examples of that. Who knows, dude?
Yeah. So, all that said is leading me to this thought process that, like, if the field is attacking this game environment through Jameis Winston, which it very clearly sets up to be, I kind of want to take it another direction and say, if Jameis Winston is keeping this game closer, we still have to kind of doubt his like elite ceiling, and I'm talking like path to being the highest scoring quarterback on the slate, which like it's totally fine in today's day and age, and in how the fantasy scene is breaking down to like 25 points from a 5K quarterback is dope if you're able to spend that salary elsewhere.
Oh yeah,
but we've also seen offensive tendencies from the Ravens where if they are pushed towards the air, Lamar Jackson has a ceiling that is like, you can't touch it. In week 1, 29.12 fantasy points against the Chiefs, obviously with over 100 yards on the ground. We saw him 3 weeks ago against the Bengals have that eruption, 348 pass yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 37.42 fantasy points. And then last night, we saw him have that 5 touchdown eruption against the Buccaneers and put up 35.44 fantasy points. So this is a guy that can put up a score you were not winning GPPs without. So if Jameis is able to have success, if Jameis does start, if all the ownership goes to Jameis, I'm kind of interested in like a Lamar Jackson, like starting our roster here with Lamar Jackson, maybe single, double. We'll see how it works out. But let's throw L-Jax in there.
Love it.
And that's going to make things a little bit hairier for salary, but we'll be all right. We'll see what happens here.
There's got to be some. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of ownership flocking to just value receivers for the Buccaneers with, their top 2 out. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and with Lamar Jackson, it's very interesting because Zay Flowers played extremely sparingly after hurting his ankle last night. He did come back into the game for an onside kick. he recovered the second onside kick. So I'm not sure what to expect about his ankle moving forward. We're going to pretend like he misses here if he has a ankle injury. So we're going to build as if he misses. Obviously, this might change for the remainder of the week.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So with that, we're gonna put in Rashod Bateman here. Obviously had the over 100 yards and a touchdown game last week or yesterday. But this is a guy now, like we look at his game logs, like since week 3, he's been pretty serviceable. 11.1 fantasy points or more in 4 of the last 5 games, only failing to do so against Buffalo. He is kind of like a downfield threat for this team. So we'll start with Bateman here. And then we'll probably have to go to one of these tight ends for salary.
So yeah, likely 4,300, and then Mark Andrews 4K. I mean,
yeah. If we do see Zay Flowers out, I'd expect we see a lot more 12 personnel from this team. They're already running a lot of 12 personnel. So if we look at the snap rates of last night, Isaiah Likely played 59% of the offensive snaps, Mark Andrews 54%, and then Charlie Kohler, who's continuing to play, played 36% of the offensive snaps. So that adds up to about a 45% 12 personnel frequency. I'd expect that to be closer to 60%. And we're probably going to see them run like close to 100% jumbo. So either 12 personnel or 21 personnel. And that's probably coming through fullback Patrick Ricard. So I would guess, based on how we've seen these tight ends used, that Isaiah Likely is probably going to play more snaps than Mark Andrews. So let's put Likely in and see where that leaves us.
Yeah, I mean, you got defense still to plug in. So it's, once defense is in, probably going to be about 5K remaining for the 2 wide receiver slots.
Okay, so we'll go to Jalen McMillan. Let's throw him in. He's probably going to be pretty popular, but the fact that we have Lamar Jackson double is probably not. It means we basically don't care what else is going on in the roster. So Jalen McMillan at only 3,700. Jalen McMillan is a guy that I liked as a prospect coming out of college, but I felt like he was most valuable to this team out of the slot. And then Liam Cohen came out and said, like, Chris Godwin is going to return to a heavy slot rate. And so I just started drafting a shit ton of Chris Godwin because that role in this offense is extremely valuable. We saw Godwin kind of be like a Cooper Kupp-esque player for this team, the motion man, seeing a lot of a good mix in his route tree of like upside inducing routes and like floor boosting routes that we're kind of become accustomed to with Cooper Kupp. So now that Godwin is out, I think Jalen McMillan, and particularly since we expect Mike Evans to miss as well, I expect this offense to kind of run through him. I don't think Cade Otton is going to he probably just saw 10 targets because of the game environment, because their pass catchers went down and it's hard to adjust in game. Whereas if you have a week of preparation, I expect Cohen to coach up Jalen McMillan here. So we'll like put him in.
I wanted to ask you real fast, something you said that was important. So you said basically he's going to be highly owned, but because we have this Lamar Double-Stack, you can do whatever you want. If you could just unpack that for a quick minute, because it's like, so because this Lamar Jackson stack is unique, you think that at this point you don't really have to worry about, okay, do I need to get leverage in these other spots? You can really play the chalk because this stack is going to be so low owned.
Yeah. So the way chalk is not binary, and I think the way that the human brain operates, we like to think of things in certainty. So we want this like magic formula of how to handle chalk. And dealing with chalk and constructing a roster is a lot more art than it is like this binary machine-driven process. There's optimizers and stuff that can do that for you. But I'm more of a like hand in the dirt. Let's figure out what we need, how much leverage, that kind of like it's an art form to me. So yes, like handling chalk is something that we're worried about. And it's something that I spend a lot of time every week discussing and developing my thoughts around with the The end around is particularly focused on chalk, on where do I think the field is going and how do we leverage against that. But this idea of leverage is more about like building plus EV rosters through a term that is like near and dear to game theorists, and that is deviations and exploitations. So if in game theory, there is an optimal way to approach any game. And if we think about DFS, every different slate is a new game because salaries are different. There's different teams playing. There's different matchups. So we know that there is a starting point that is optimal for a given slate. We have no idea what that is. We don't have a time machine. We can't like, we know that like there's commonly accepted plus EV tendencies that we utilize in DFS, like roster construction stuff, stacking and correlation, including tight ends in a primary stack, all these things that have a hit rate greater than their utilization rate that we can say these are optimal practices. But we know that like there is an optimal path on the game tree of clicking buttons that going down this path will lead you to the optimal roster for that week. So knowing that, any deviation away from optimal in any game we're playing, whether it's rock, paper, scissors, where you're supposed to be exactly, you're supposed to throw each rock, paper, and scissors at a 33% frequency and completely random within a like small sample size, right? Now, like go to DFS or best ball, these games that we're playing that have borderline infinite potential outcomes. It is very, very hard to like discern what the optimal path is on that game tree and what a deviation away from optimal will do to your expected value. So all these things come in. Now we throw in variance, we throw in all these other concepts that we know are present in these games we're playing. And our goal is to manage variance enough to place us in position to win over time. And one way that we are looking to do so is through these deviations away from optimal. And any deviation away from optimal is going to incur a hit in expected value. So if we deviate away from optimal, which we are looking to do when we're looking at things like ownership, when we're looking at things like leverage, we are looking for that deviation to generate or create enough boost to expected value to offset that dip that we know just deviating from optimal will incur.
Okay.
So that is
tracking.
That is game theory in a nutshell. That is what we're looking to do. And when we're talking about like breaking down our decision-making process in game theory, we're basically considering three big things. We're considering like our knowledge. What do we know about the game? What are we doing to maximize our profitability? We're looking at the prescribed contest rules. So in that is the payouts for the contests we're playing. In that is like what I don't know. We'll just leave it at that. So the prescribed contest rules are the governing rules that everybody is playing by, and we must have like not just a working knowledge, but a mastery over those to be able to influence like our decision-making process. A big thing for DFS is payout table. That's why contest size is important. That's why all these like the flatness of the payout tables, we're going to have a very different influence to our decision-making process in 50-50s or double ups as compared to the Millie Maker. No, those are the two extremes. That is going to influence how much variance we accept, all these things. So having a mastery of the contest rules is important. And the final piece is our observations of the field, because those can influence those deviations that we now turn into exploitations, which is exploiting known field tendencies away from optimal theory to give us that boost in EV. So that quick down and dirty run through of like what game theory is, what it means, what we're trying to do. So yeah, back to the question to answer it as roundabout as I can. It depends when we're talking about chalk. The fact, like if we went with Jameis, like a Jameis double on this roster with Jalen McMillan, we know we're going to be, as far as roster construction goes, more in line with where a bigger chunk of the field is going. So we would not be able to play like Kareem Hunt, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins, like these running backs that I expect to garner a lot of ownership. We would not be able to do that on that roster because we're going to be so close to a larger chunk of the field as far as roster construction, salary allocation goes, that like the way that I've used it, we've visualized this in the past is I likened it to traffic. And say we're going to, and I did this on the Slate podcast with Zandamir, and the way that we broke this down is, say you are taking your family to Disneyland. Everybody's going to Disneyland. Everyone wants to get there when the park opens. There is one primary freeway that is going to get you to Disneyland along with everybody else. But there's also these off-ramps that we can take. There's these deviations. There's these other paths that we can take going to Disneyland or on the game tree in these games. The further you go down, the further you go down Broadway freeway that is leading us straight to Disneyland, the more traffic you're going to incur and the more rosters you're going to be fighting against, because everybody's trying to get to Disneyland. The most direct way to do that is to use Broadway freeway or whatever we call it.
Yeah. Optimal theory, as you said. Yeah.
The earlier you depart that main thoroughfare, that freeway, the earlier off-ramp you take, the more freedom you have for the rest of your decisions down the road to get to Disneyland. The closer you get to Disneyland on the main freeway, the larger deviation you're going to have to make away from the freeway to keep you away from the traffic. So that's a way to conceptualize this idea of like this art form that we're trying to bring together as far as handling chalk and making these deviations away from where the field is going. So on this roster, we took an early off ramp. We didn't go to build our primary stack around who's, probably going to be one of the chalkiest quarterbacks if we get that presented to us in Jameis. We flipped it directly on its head and went with Lamar Jackson doubles. So that fact that we departed that freeway earlier gives us a little bit more freedom for our follow-on decisions.
Absolutely, man. Great stuff. Great stuff. I love kind of that getting deeper down into the nuts and bolts of kind of, how you can think through. Because like you said, this is a strategy game. If you're just looking at, I'm going to pick, the best guys on this slate, it's going to be hard to find your way to the top. So with that, we got defense and receiver left. You want to look at defense first here?
Yeah, let's look at defense. And there's some interesting options at the top. Typically, I'm looking to scroll down as far as I'm comfortable. I don't even want to use comfortable with defense. Like last week I played the Giants and they just got absolutely annihilated. But this week I kind of want to explore some of these pay up options. And I think there's a lot of different potential options we have here on this roster. Like we can go KC correlated with Kareem Hunt. We can go the Chargers correlated with J.K. Dobbins. We can go Denver defense correlated with Javonte Williams. But I want to think this through real quick. Like there's other game environments that we might have to account for. And I'm just thinking, like, do we need to account for the Lions? Like the Lions have the highest Vegas implied team total on the slate. What is a path to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs and potentially Dave Montgomery, depending on his injury, and Sam Laporta? What is the pathway to them failing? And I think their defense succeeding is one of those pathways, but like Aiden Hutchinson is out. So it's like that. I was trying to think through all those things, like as I'm just sitting here staring at a blank screen. So I'll vocalize those comments.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely processing it in real time for sure.
So we're going to go. Let's see. Are there any other team game environment stuff that we should probably account for? Potentially the Jets, like we didn't play Brees Hall on this roster. I don't really like that in this spot against New England. Yeah, I don't really like that. That game environment is doo-doo for pass volume.
Yeah, and just when you look at kind of some of the lower options, I mean, yeah, New England at 2,500, they have a good defense, but I mean, they haven't been like, I don't know, putting up great scores necessarily. So I mean,
Yeah.
the value tier just it doesn't look all that strong. Like, I mean, I'm just trying to see where I would even be comfortable going.
Let's account for a different game environment here, and then we'll see what's left over at wide receiver and see if we need to adjust. Let's throw the Bills in. The Bills are on the road against Seattle. We know Seattle leads the league in total pass volume, so pass attempts per game. They lead the league in pass rate over expectation, and the strength of this Bills defense is their pass defense. So we'll throw them in. They help us account for a game environment that the field is probably going to have some exposure to.
Yeah.
What does that leave us with?
7,500. So
oh yeah, we got mad options.
Let's see.
Let's plug in Diggs. That gives us another game environment. So like on this roster, we didn't play Joe Mixon, like we talked about. A way for Joe Mixon to fail is if Stefon Diggs scores touchdowns. If the touchdowns go elsewhere, that's a path for Joe Mixon to fail, to put up a score you couldn't live without. Because like the primary thing propelling him to these crazy fantasy scores that we talked about earlier, he's gone over 100 yards on the ground, but he scored 5 touchdowns in those 3 games. So if he doesn't score those touchdowns, if they go to Steph Diggs here, that's a way for him to fail. So yeah, there's your roster, man.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, this and I again liked how you just closed it out by thinking through. It's super valuable. It's like, okay, we didn't account for like the Buffalo Seattle game, so we should account for it somehow. And the defense is a way that you're benefiting if those, if offensively things aren't going the way that the field is expecting or other rosters. Same with Diggs. So love it, dude. Any closing thoughts before we ship this one?
There's going to be a lot more injury news that's going to affect this slate. And we've gotten so accustomed to it this year, man. The wide receiver injuries have been insane. But yeah, this slate is probably going to look a lot different come Friday, Saturday than it does now. So just stay kind of malleable and able to adjust to those changes that are coming.
Absolutely, dude. But, I will say that the ceiling of Lamar Jackson will not change by Sunday. So I think I love this build and the way you used that kind of flipping the script on what is likely to be Jameis Winston, almost like Jameis Winston week. It's like a holiday for, because
I'll be celebrating.
Jameis Winston can do, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Hilow, great stuff, man. As always, guys, make sure to check out DFS Lab tomorrow, the FanDuel edition, and throughout the week. We'll catch you guys on the show. Hilow, take it easy. Thanks for joining.
Peace.